Right. Welcome, my hippie mom community. So happy you're here. And I am so happy to introduce you to Georgia Foster. Welcome, Georgia.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so,
Excited to chat about everything.
oh my gosh. And you're coming to us from all the way from Melbourne, Australia, right?
Correct? Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Completely two different time zones, my friends. We did it. Um, you know what? Let's start with your story. Tell me, how did you get into your work? Give us some background.
Yeah, well, I think probably pre my career, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had very low self-esteem. I had a lot of social anxiety, and I had a food and alcohol issue. So I ended up I had this kind of moment where I realized I just needed to kind of find who I was. And I was probably about 24 at the time. And I thought, what do I do? So I went to the travel agent and she said to me, I said, I don't want to go on a holiday where I'm overeating, over drinking. Is there anywhere I can go where I can just kind of sit with myself and figure out who I am? And to just there's this health retreat in Queensland where you eat vegan food and you go on long mountain walks. I'm like, oh, that sounds like me. But what I went into was, which I didn't expect at all, was I went into a week of therapy, like morning therapy for 7 days. And in that moment, I sat in a room with like 20 people who were from like, some were mums, some were dads, some were very wealthy, successful people in business. Uh, but I realized at the end of the 7 days, we all had the same problem. We didn't like ourselves. And I used to think that if somebody looked good on the outside, that meant they felt good on the inside. That was just my ignorance, right? Probably my age being 24. And I thought everybody else liked themselves except me. So I was on a bit of a self-discovery. And then when took me a while, I got into crystals and healing books and lots of different things, Reiki. And then I found this book on my mother's coffee table called Embracing Ourselves. And I realized that this book really changed how I thought about myself. I'm
Mm.
like, wow, this is extraordinary. It's a Jungian psychology. And I was so impressed with what this book had to say. And really, the theory is that we're all made up of many selves or sub-personalities. And one personality trait is called the inner critic. I'll just explain some other personalities. But I realized that my inner critic had been running my show, right? My emotional and physical show. So I had the blessing, I wrote to them, and they had a summer camp going. And that was when I was just turned 28. And I went and studied with the founders of this particular Jungian psychology. It really helped me understand myself. But then I moved on to London, and I was just working as in those days you called it a secretary on an investment trading floor. And I found this ad for a hypnotherapy course. I thought that's really interesting. And that was my moment. I thought, oh my goodness, this is something I really want to do. And I sailed through the training with 18 months training part-time. And then I was invited back to lecture for the college. So for many years, I was one of the senior lecturers for the largest hypnotherapy school in Europe. And I was building my own clinic as well in London. And it's when I discovered, and I hadn't even thought about it before because I'm an Australian, we like our drink. And I had quite a lot of corporate clients. And there was a very common theme coming through. George, I drink too much. And we were talking about successful lawyers, bankers, insurance brokers, and none of them wanted to quit. And in those days, London was a big den of drinking. Like a lot of business was done over deals at lunchtime. So I kind of built a reputation amongst the banking industry that I could help people reduce their drinking when they're having to quit. But what was really fundamental for me was that I now knew that these people were not alcoholics. Like these are fully functioning, beautiful souls who hardworking, have families, and are very driven in a lot of ways, but also use alcohol as a way just to get away from everything and just to de-stress. And so, as my reputation kind of secretly through the doors of the pubs and the bars and the homes, I end up getting a very large profile with a lot of mums.
Mm,
And, in all of the decades of experiences of being a mum, I had a lot of mums who'd come and see me and say to me, Georgia, I didn't touch any alcohol until I went to the mums group, right? After I had my baby. And I like people were just pouring wine. I'm like, I better belong and connect. And so I think a lot of people assume that, and there's another point, that drinking in a particular way, if you're an alcoholic, it's just become a habit. And
mm,
that's really what I want to put the message across today is delighted to talk to you because one of my biggest demographics are mums. And I
mm.
know I'm a mum of triplet boys. And I know how tough it is. So I wanted just to share with you. I believe there's nothing wrong with people. I think most people are not alcoholics. I think
Mm.
they're habitual emotional drinkers, and I think there's a big difference there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So first question is you're in this industry, you're doing like how did you actually build a reputation of helping people drink less? Was it just something that you integrated? Because I didn't really understand exactly like how did that actually occur? Did you realize like I want to cut down my alcohol? Like what was that moment in time where you're like there's something here?
Yeah, no, good question. It happened organically,
Mhm.
and but the one thing that really helped me was I had quite a few journalists on my database, and I decided I was at the time it was very uncool to self-publish, but I'd actually had a book deal with HarperCollins about weight loss, but that wasn't my big passion.
Mm.
And I don't know if anybody out there has written a book, but getting a book deal with HarperCollins didn't put my name in lights. It was very hard and very soul destroying. And so I decided that the one book I wanted to write was about helping people drink less. So I went to actually went away with my mum and we went to the States and I basically wrote the book in 10 days. It was called The Drink Less Mind.
Wow.
And I decided then that I wanted to try and get that book, The Name in Lights, but because I didn't have a book deal and I got rejected by everybody. So I sent those two books to a couple of journalists who were in my corner, who'd come to see me about private things, nothing to do with drinking. And literally, they were freelancers, and literally within 6 weeks, I was in the first Psychologies magazine. I was in the Sunday Times newspaper. Then I was a regular on Sky News. And then I did employ a publicist because I realized that media really does help. So that's when I kind of thought, actually, people are interested, right? People really want this. Because I was thinking, oh, I'll just give it to my clients, da 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 da. But then I knew I was onto something, and I knew in my heart that people needed to have a different message that you don't belong on a park bench with a bottle, in a brown paper bag, that you really are a fully functioning person. And it was interesting that years later, Hay House, I had a meeting with Hay House about buying the rights to the book, but I was just ahead by then, and there's really no money in book, you know,
Mm.
obviously it's, and for me, I just thought, and then the internet came along and it was like, well, I can make this online. People don't have to come to London to see me. I had people flying, regulars from New York coming over, people coming from Ireland, because Irish people are big drinkers, and Scotland. And then when I come back home to Melbourne for to see my family, people want to come and see me. So for me, it was just became so obvious that I
Mm.
needed to become known for this and really, I mean, to specialize in this particular area.
Yeah, no, I love it. It makes so much sense. In your work, I mean, how would you define someone being an alcoholic and someone just being a casual drinker or someone that's not an alcoholic? I mean, where do we draw that line? Do you know? Is that something that you've been across where there's people that obviously are alcoholics and need some help, and there's other people, maybe like the moms that just drink more and they don't want to drink as much. So where is that line?
Mm. Well, I think that. For me, somebody who's an alcoholic is somebody who the alcohol is more important than the family dynamics, more
Mm,
important than financials, more important than stability. I mean, the type of drink I'm talking about isn't having a glass of wine at 9 o'clock in the morning,
okay.
and is a very responsible person. Drives their kids to this or that or whatever. And I think that this is where the so two things to answer that question. The first one is a lot of people who are alcoholics have a lot of trauma in their past,
Mm,
whereas the people I'm talking about have just been using alcohol as their coping strategy, right?
okay.
It's like, because what we know now, and the neuroscientists have studied the brain. When you drink alcohol, that inner critic, that boom, doom, gloom voice that drives you drink. You were terrible at that meeting today. What did you say at the school gates today? Or you should have done this, or da 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 da. Da. And I call it radio crazy in your head. And then
Mm,
as soon as you have a drink, whether it's vodka, tequila, beer, or whatever it is, that inner critic goes away. It actually turns itself down. So
yeah.
people realize that unbeknownst to themselves is they're not drinking to drink. I mean, I like to train people to bring the pleasure back. So they're really tasting it. They're not tasting it. They're gulping it back to turn themselves around, tune out of the inner critic, I should say, and turn around their thinking to be more calm. So, and a lot of people say to me, I mean, I've had a lot of criticism about my approach, but when you're in the coalface, I had two clinics, one at my home in West London and one in the business district, it's very hard to kind of say, hang on, this is just in your head, Georgia, because not only is it about people changing their coping strategy, because that's really what it is, because I always say it's the thinking before the drinking that's the problem. So
Mm,
somebody who's an alcoholic is they have wired their brain that alcohol is their only solution, right? And
okay.
there's a lot of trauma involved. But the people I'm talking about is they've just wired their brain to think that alcohol extinguishes the inner critic, stress, anxiety, boredom. I mean, the empty nester mums, they think, my kids are gone. I've got no one to look after. They feel that sense of, you know, where am I in the world now? And I think that the emotional drivers is what happens before that first drink. And if you work with that particular step first,
Mm,
right? That people go to the doctor and the doctor says, just drink less. Well, it's a bit like saying, I'll just eat less. There's
mm,
always something that happens before food. I mean, I specialize in food as well. Basically, things that, try to extinguish those emotions. And I realize that, a lot of people are blaming the second bit, but something always happens before that,
oh my
right?
God. Yes.
So
Yes.
that's what you've got to work on.
I
And
love
that's what I specialize in.
I love this so much for many reasons. One, because there's so much shame around it.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
much shame for, and especially as moms, because a lot of moms are not supported. Alcohol tends to be the only numbing thing that can truly give them relief. And then after there's shame around it. And then that, I believe, would increase the likeliness to drink more. It's almost like a cycle that is hard to get out. I know because I've been there. I've totally been there. So I get that. So I love this so much because you're really, what you're saying is it's not about the drinking, it's what happens before. It's in the thinking, in the mind. And that's what you really help people work with, right? Because I can see, and tell me if I'm right, that when you work with that first, drinking less becomes more natural, more organic.
Yes, correct. And one of the signs of that is that people say to me, Georgia, actually, I realize I was drinking really bad wine. I was just buying it because it was cheap, but it was giving me a feeling. And
Mm,
now it's about having a taste and enjoying it. I mean, wine has been around, all these spirits have been around for a very long time. It's part of our culture. And I'm not saying that. So I like to drink, so I'm not saying don't drink. And there are a lot of sober coaches out there. I'm not one of those people. But I do believe that really alcohol is, when it's used for emotional medicinal purposes, it will take you down a bad path.
Yeah.
Because what happens is it's a bit of a cycle, right? So the inner critic says, you drank too much last night. What's your problem? Anxiety kicks in. All you can think about is when I can have that first drink, whether it's beer or whatever it is. And it's not that you have a problem. You have an inner critic problem. You have a well, the inner critic causes anxiety, and anxiety causes all the cortisol and adrenaline to pump through your bloodstream. And then your brain and body go, oh, I don't like this feeling. What did I do last time? And if it was a glass of wine, it goes, get me the wine.
Mhm.
So, and a lot of people feel they're out of control, or they say, Georgia, I don't have any willpower. I'm like, you know what? It's nothing to do with willpower. When your conscious mind has a great goal and says, right, tonight I'm not going to drink. That's it. I'm going to not drink all week. And then you get stuck in a traffic jam taking a kid to basketball practice and they're late or their finals, whatever it is, and you feel like, oh my God, I screwed up as a mom and I've let my child down, and you come home and you feel really berating yourself. And then bang, I promised that I wouldn't drink tonight, but bang, and we had that wine. And then because of the inner critic saying you screwed up, whatever it was, and then this whole cycle keeps going. So actually what I do is I train people's minds to tune out of the inner critic.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Can you give us a little bit of your inner secrets, like you said? Obviously, we have a resource for our moms that if you're sitting here like, oh my gosh, this is me, this is what I need, we got you. Okay. George is going to take care of you. But I'm curious, like, can you kind of walk us through maybe the format or some of the foundations that you offer just to kind of give moms a little more insight to of how you actually help them do this.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, I'd like to kind of explain that when your conscious mind and your unconscious mind are not in agreement, so you're thinking, I really don't want to drink tonight, but I do. It's not that you, like willpower, as I said, it's the deeper part of your mind manages the emotional show. So if you consciously want to do something, and it's the same with food, if your deeper mind actually has created a habit that your coping strategy is wine, beer, chocolate cookies, whatever it is, it will demand that when you feel vulnerable. So with the power of hypnosis, you can educate your mind just when your eyes are closed, and there's real science behind hypnosis. But before I
Mhm.
share that, I just want to say that I find a lot of mums have a mixture of a couple of personality traits. And the first one is that perfectionist, that
Mhm.
all or nothing drinker. Like, I'm not going to drink all week. And they may not drink all week because of the responsibilities. But the weekend comes, I'm off the hook. Maybe the husband's home or whatever's happening. And then it's like, right, I'm going to party. And there's nothing wrong with your party, but it can get into a bit of a slippery slope. So the perfectionists often in my field tend to just quit because they can't get that middle ground drinking. They're either here with their drinking or they're here with their drinking. They're either not drinking at all, they're really caning it, and they have memory loss and they might get quite drunk quite quickly. But quick drinkers have anxiety, right? They're trying to turn down that inner critic really quickly
Mhm.
because they're so driven to be perfect. And what is interesting when people drink alcohol, if they have that perfectionist personality, they become that relaxed, chilled out person and they don't care. And so people get addicted to being in that space because it gives them a break from the inner critic.
Mhm.
So I say to mums, well, hang on a minute, that break is causing you the grief. We need to get your mind to have that break before you drink to get the dopamine because when you drink alcohol, dopamine increases. So I say, why don't we get your mind to naturally produce more dopamine during your day through hypnosis. I have recordings in all of my programs. So my 7 day program has a daily recording, and it's a 7 stage program that for me is really about, I think, and I'm not anti-therapy at all, but by the time people come to see me, they're done with the why did it happen? I'm saying, you know what? It doesn't matter.
Mm.
It doesn't matter where it came from. What we know, what the neuroscientists have confirmed, is the mind is adaptable and pliable to change. You just need to give it the right messages. And hypnosis is such a powerful tool for that. And then there is the other personality called the pleaser, which is a very mum personality.
Oh, yes.
The nurturer, the carer, the looker afterer, put yourself last. So a lot of mums then use that alcohol as the way I've done everything for everybody else. Now it's my time for me,
Hmm.
right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if it becomes once again a habit, then you forget there are other tools to nurture yourself. It doesn't have to be just wine or beer or tequila, you know? We use it as the quick fix to say, I'm done. It's now my turn to be looking after me. So the mums kind of, I find a real combination between being driven, trying to be the perfect mum, but also being the nurturer. So they've got very strong personalities in both camps, and they work very well together because the perfectionist gets the job done and the pleaser makes sure the nurturing continues. So
Mm.
a lot of people I find who aren't in this category, as in the family, mums, they may have more the perfectionist or more the pleaser, a combination of both. But mums have a really, generally, they have both these personality traits with that inner critic on top. So I really want to emphasize that being a pleaser is beautiful. It's nothing wrong with being a pleaser. It's a fantastic personality because it means that you'll be liked and you'll be loved, but we leave ourselves last,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, I do.
And then the booze becomes that friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not a very good friend. It can be an ally. It can be, enjoyable. Like I love that you said that, like enjoy it, savor it, but it's not a crutch. It's the worst
No.
crutch. It doesn't hold you up. It puts you on the floor. It's not. So I love this. I feel like a lot of like what you said, it's that all or nothing. Like I'm going to either not drink at all or I'm going to it's like where is that healthy balance? And I think that can be taken in every aspect of life. But at the same time, the messages are out there. There's a lot of shame for moms. I know a lot of moms that, that's the only thing that does bring them relief. And just want to say, I love that you're using hypnotherapy. I love that you're using these ways to talk to the subconscious to help people truly break free of these habits. I think that's just amazing because there's only so much you can do with the mind. If you don't have awareness, there's only so much you can do. So working on that level. Um, my next question is, when people go through, so is it a 7 day, it's a 7 step? Is it a 7 day? Like kind of what's the process? Let people in a little bit so that they can understand like what does it take? Because moms are busy, but this is important.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. No, good point. Well, the great thing is you can listen to this. So every day it's a stage of going from understanding how the mind works
Hmm.
and working very much with a couple of neuroscientists in London. And really, we were kind of, because when I trained to be a hypnotherapist, it was still a bit hocus pocus. And, even though there was a lot of data, it was kind of necessarily available. But working with a couple of neuroscientists who were in the forefront of brain changing, oxytocin, all of those kind of chemicals in the brain. And they realized that actually in hypnosis, what happens is you can change on a cellular level someone's chemical reactions to things. But that starts with the mind and the relaxation too. So for me, with hypnosis, it's such a powerful tool because what was your question? Sorry, I think I distract.
Oh, no, no, that's okay. I guess what I love, well, one, I love what you're talking about too, talking about hypnosis, because I think that's an important aspect of this that people need to get through. So I do want to move through that. The other is like, what if someone was to say, all right, I'm in, what can they
Oh, the
expect?
same day, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the thing is that so unlike traditional therapy, which has got a very important place, hypnosis trains the mind to move on very quickly. So, for example, if somebody came to see me with the fear of flying, and I've hypnotized many people with fear of flying or stopping smoking, within 25 minutes, they can walk out the door and they can stop smoking, get on a plane. How is that possible? I'm not a witch. It's because the mind learns very quickly when you go to the emotional part of the brain. So
Mm,
day one of the 7 days to drink less is really educating people that they have the resources. It's all there.
love it.
So the first day is really training the mind. I call it educating the library to have a new space, a new place, and starting to train the mind to tune out of that fear-based part of the brain and
Hmm.
being in a calmer space before they drink. Now, like everything, like going to the gym, the mind is a muscle. So you do need to exercise it. So over the 7 days, and people can take 3 weeks to do the program, but fundamentally, is that's the first place to start, is realizing that this is a tool that within 25 minutes, and I say 25 minutes because each recording is 25 minutes, is they say around about 20 minutes is good. So having a little siesta before the kids come home from school. At night time, I think in this world it's very acceptable to do meditation. And meditation is the same brainwave activity as hypnosis. The only difference is I find with perfectionists, they tend to get frustrated that they can't go into this nothingness kind of state, right? I'm saying you don't need this perfect situation. Just closing your eyes, you can put it on the morning before you get out of bed if you've got the time, afternoon, or go to sleep with it at night. Now, what is beautiful is then we go on to day two, which is the psychology. And the psychology is about tuning out of that inner critic, right? And thinking, oh my God, it's running my show, it's controlling my life, and it doesn't have to be. And the only reason why it becomes so strong is because of life, media, the demands, it could be financial pressures, could be relationship issues, it could be kid pressures, so many things going on. But how you interpret that world is really what's key. A lot of it
Mm-hmm.
you can't change. Can't change somebody who, I mean, a lot of pleasers can attract a narcissist or people who are quite heavily judgmental or critical. And it's really about starting, and pleasers have a problem with the word no, right? So perfectionists can go to a 40th or 50th birthday party, and if they're training for a marathon, will drink water all night. But a pleaser in that same function will probably feel guilty. I better have a drink because I need to make sure the host is feeling like I'm belonging, I'm connecting and everything. So pleasers can be coerced quite easily into drinking, eating, whatever. But so that's day two. And then day three is starting to really work with that self-esteem because self-esteem is behind all of this, right? Self-esteem is something that we're not born with. We have to learn it. And we have to, because life can erode it. And when we have children, I think for me, I'm sure you would agree with me, is the responsibility is so overwhelming sometimes.
Hmm.
And the fear that comes with it, the
Yes.
anxiety is, mother's little helper. It can extinguish things very quickly. So I explained that really I talked about this word charisma, and I know it's a very old-fashioned word, but it's a really important word. Is you're beautiful the way you are,
Mm,
right? You don't need to drink to relax. Your mind thinks it does, but that's a habit. You
yes.
can unlearn that.
Mm,
And when you realize that your mind has the tools to do that, then you realize you are at the school gates calm. You don't need to pretend to be the slimmest, most clever, whatever. Because I think charisma is about not being the most perfect person who walks in the room.
Yes.
Charisma is
And I just want to add, it's authenticity.
correct.
I love
Absolutely.
that. Nothing like that on authentic person. Yes. So I wanted to add that in there because I feel that so much with you.
Yeah, no. And being authentic means the charismatic, you know when to be vulnerable, you know when to be a little bit retreated, a little bit protected. You've got a bit of an energy about somebody, and you think, I'm just going to be a little bit shielded, and really starting to honor your self-nurturing,
Mm,
right? Your self-care, rather than thinking it's got to come in a glass of wine or a tequila.
mm, mm,
And when that shift happens, amazing things happen. You realize that you don't want to be bullied, you don't have to do this. Hang on a minute. And some people say to me, well, Georgia, if I, and this is a really important top tip, and it's a very, one of my clients in London said, oh, she was happy to share the story. In fact, it is quite a kind of a funny story because she's a very funny character. She was coming to see about her drinking, and her husband had said to her, you need to do something about your drinking. So her husband didn't know how she was doing it. She said, just leave it with me. I'll sort it out. Two young children, mum at home. She was working part time. He used to come home from work, and he was a very tricky person. He was very critical, very controlling, and he liked to have a perfect home. She was a bit messy, and he was just like, he wanted to have this perfect wife, but she, was drinking a bit too much. So he was heavily critical of her drinking. But then what would happen was she would drink. He'd come home from work, they'd open a bottle of wine and he would drink, but she would already have had a sneaky one before to calm her nerves because he used to put her on edge. She felt like she was walking on eggshells.
mm.
So she said, my husband and I end up having these fights and our children saying, Mom, Dad, stop arguing. And he just said, look, it's the drink. He would say, the children, your mum's drinking too much. He'd be like so shamed. It was just an awful situation. So when she came to see me, she said, look, I said, look, I think you're in a very compromised situation. I said, but what you need to do is you're having these hardcore conversations with a glass in your hand. What you need to do, we're going to train your mind to drink with a glass of water or a cup of tea in your hand so that when you have these conversations, you're all there,
Mm,
right? And she did this. We in hypnosis, we trained her mind to be calm and have those, because pleasers aren't very good at communicating sober. They tend to wait for the alcohol to have their voice. So anyway, she she was having this conversation with her husband and she came back to me and said, oh my God, it's really working. She said, Georgia, I'm actually, we kind of feel like we're getting somewhere. And then I get a call from him, and he was trying to find out what was going on. Like, and I said to her, you see, and then he called me and said to me, my wife's never coming to see you again because he got found out,
mm,
right?
mhm.
Because when she didn't have the alcohol in her bloodstream, he knew she was communicating the truth.
Yes. Wow.
So what I teach in the program is to communicate sober.
Yeah.
Because then you're not using alcohol as your communicator, as your little
Oh,
confidence pill.
it's the worst. Doesn't.
Correct.
Yeah. Don't do that. But yeah, I feel that. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
it's the same for sober sex. Like I say to people, the inner critic, hides in all, bedrooms when you think, oh, I'm too fat or I won't relax or I won't have an orgasm or whatever it is. And there's so many people. And in fact, um, I was watching, I think you call it, is it the panel in America where the four women sit there and they
oh
talk about,
yeah.
is
Uh-huh.
it, yeah,
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember what it's called, but I know what you're talking about. We have four women talking about, yeah, I can't remember.
correct.
Yes, okay.
But there were the equivalent in Britain, I can't remember what's called now. Maybe it is the
Okay.
panel.
Okay.
And they were all on the women on the show that day were talking about the fact that none of them had ever had sober sex. They're all mums, right?
Gosh, yes.
And so part of it is really starting to train the mind and body to relax. And
Hmm.
as you said, authentic. right? You
Yeah.
don't have to be this perfect physical person. You don't, because really nobody is that person, right?
Right.
And that's good.
Yes, yes. We're just, yeah, we've just been conditioned and lied to think that we're supposed to be, but we never can and will be. So let's just get with the truth and be okay with it. Just be authentic. I love that. And I want to just say it, be a little vulnerable. I can completely relate to that. When I was younger and was drinking all the time, never had sober. That was my go-to. And I will say sober sex is so much better in my
Oh,
so
absolutely.
much better, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, you're present, you're
Yes.
fully immersed. No, I completely agree. But that takes training too, because
Yes.
the inner critic is hiding in every kitchen, every bedroom, every bathroom, every boardroom, every shopping
Oh,
mall. And we've got to really the crux is training the mind to tune out of it. But just going back to the 7 days, I think what I'd love to share with everybody is a tool and it's free and it's right here. You can do it right now. Because what I find with all of my clients, what I do, whether people are coming to see me for public speaking anxiety or drinking less or being in a better space with food, because I talk about having in the program having alcohol-free days, which is a really important part of people's lives.
yeah.
Definitely, that's a goal within the 7 day program is to train your mind to have space from alcohol, so you can start to get to know who you are without drinking in the evenings, in
Yeah.
particular.
Love
Very
that.
important, and train your mind to have sober sleep because quality sober
Oh,
sleep is extraordinary.
oh, it is. Yes, it is. Amen.
In fact, I was talking to one of my very dear mum friends who's 10 years younger than me, and she is going through menopause now. And she's like, oh my God, when I drink, my sleep is so poor. And I think that's also another time when hormonally you change
Yeah.
and you digestively shift. Everything happens. And I think that alcohol starts to become a bit of a pain as well, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
So having those sober sleeps are really,
Yeah.
really good.
Sober
Highly
sleep.
recommend them. So that's part of the program too. And it's really uplifting because I just think that there's so much bad media about alcohol. And I said, I don't suggest that everybody should or shouldn't quit. That's a personal journey. But if it's something you don't want to do, it's a good middle ground option, you know?
Yes.
Um, if you go fly to Paris, you're having French champagne, why not, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that so what I'd love to really explain, one of the most important parts of my work is educating the power of the mind, then going into the inner dialogue, which I call the inner critic, the pleaser, the perfectionist, working with the self-esteem, then going into alcohol-free days, talking about really helping yourself be in a better space in all areas of your life. But the beautiful part is training your mind. I call it future technique. So in my clinic time in London, I had quite a few well-known people would come and see me about many different things. But one of the biggest successes of hypnosis and the A grade sports people, performers, in the world, uh, they all, I don't know, they all do it, but a lot of them do this technique. And so what happens is the mind works on history. It thinks everything you've done is true because it's
Mm,
got that reference. And the reason why people overeat or overdrink, it's not because, once again, they have lack of willpower. It's because they don't have references that represent the opposite.
mm,
So when you're in hypnosis, the mind doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. Everything you experience, it thinks it's real. And the more emotion you put into that feeling. So I say to people with one of the recordings of the 7 day program, just close your eyes. I guide people through it anyway. But you could just put some Mozart on or some, I call it angel music or meditation music or drum music or whatever. And just lie quietly and just imagine yourself past an event, whether it's I've got to go to a wedding and I know I'm going to drink too much because I'm nervous about the people there. Imagine past the event, waking up the next day and thinking, wow, I had a sip of wine, I had a sip of water, and see yourself having experienced that outcome. Your mind will take that on board, and the more you rehearse that, the
Wow.
more it believes it to be true. So that's why people would come to see me and fail their driving test 6 times, but the seventh time they pass, it's not because I'm a witch. It's because I have helped them train their mind to build a new library of references
Mm,
that reflect winning, succeeding, feeling safe with this goal that they want to set. And that's a big part of the program is working with this at the end. So, and it applies to so many things.
goodness.
It's
Yes.
just not about drinking or food. It applies to everything, like getting a new job or a new relationship. And it could be even if you've got a problem with your neighbor, you talk about the authenticity, authentically saying to yourself, nobody likes conflict. So, how do I resolve it? Just imagine the conflict being resolved. You don't know how it's being resolved, but you can see yourself waving to your neighbor or just energetically feeling shielded and protected so you can get on with your day. It could be, you know, a conflict with a friend, whatever it is, just wishing them well and asking the universe to protect you and show you that there's another way. Because
Mm,
it's a bit like the story about a client who came to see me and said, Georgia, I'm in the corporate world. I want to meet somebody. I want to marry. I want to settle down, but I need somebody in the corporate world because I'm in the corporate world and it makes sense. We'd have a lot in common. My sister's married to a plumber, and I don't want to marry a plumber because we've already got one of them in the family. And she's now married to a plumber. Because instead of going for what it looks like, we went for what it feels like.
yes.
The man who's going to be right for you, who's authentic, who has
Mhm.
integrity, who is a person who is emotionally intelligent, socially intelligent. And, those were the things that we trained her mind to attract. And
Mhm.
that's what the mind does. It's like a magnet. And the more feelings you have in a certain category, like calm, confidence, and you practice it in certain ways, certain aspects of your life, your mind thinks it's real. So that is a very big, beautiful, and you can do that. Anybody can do that now. You don't have to use my program, of course. But it's such a lot of people don't teach this method because they want to keep it secret. But actually, there's no secret to it. It's really
Yeah.
simple, really, really simple.
Wow, I love it. Georgia, is this particular program just for alcohol, or does it work with people that eat too much, or is it specifically for alcohol?
Yeah, no, good question. I have my 7 days to drink less program,
Mhm.
and then I have my 6 week drink less boot camp, which is more like coming to see me in the clinic for 6 weeks.
Oh,
It's all self-taught, but I have a lot more hypnosis and more content. But 7 days is great. I mean, um, but then I have the weightless mind, which is it's the same program, but it's over 7 days. You would use it for food. And then I have the pajama diet, which is very much about fitness, mind fitness, physical fitness. I've done a little research on people who, in particular, who've had operations or surgery and they've lost their confidence about getting physically strong. And then I have my emotional resilience training, which is really for those that say, Georgia, I don't have a food issue, I don't have a drink issue, but I've got an anxiety issue. Like I really do. Like I
yeah.
had a client of mine who from the States who would come and see me in London when she was in town, and she said to me, Georgia, I've worked out the only difference between British people and American people is in Britain you've got a pub on every corner, and in America you've got a pharmacy, right? So it's like we all, and I'm not saying people shouldn't be on medication either,
Yeah.
but the inner critic is the catalyst to anxiety.
Yeah.
It's the catalyst to depression.
Yeah.
And once you learn to train your mind to tune out of the inner critic, your whole chemical balance shifts, your whole feeling. I'm not saying people should stop medication, but when you realize that you can run your show in a better space,
Mm-hmm.
everything's easier to deal with, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, no, that feels so good and so in alignment with where our podcast has been going, where our mothers are going. And I am just so grateful that we got to connect and that we get to bring your message to our community. Truly. It really feels exciting for me, that moms are going to have this resource. And not only that, but I just feel an alleviation of shame around it and fear and saying, hey, you have everything you need already within you. You're here, Georgia. Georgia's here, my friends, to help show you back into yourself. Because that's what I believe is a true teacher, is someone that guides you home to yourself, right? You,
Absolutely.
right? That's the true teacher. That's the true guide, right? Anyone that says, I got it, you got to keep following me. No, 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 no. You have it already within you. Let Georgia show you how to get there. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to make sure that we put the resources that we discussed in the show notes so people can just go right away to the show notes, connect with you. And yeah, I'm just so excited that this podcast will live on here forever.
Oh, thank you for your time. And anybody, please, any questions, I'm here.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Georgia, thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right, everyone. We'll catch you on the next Hippie Moms podcast. Bye.